Welcome to Rates and Barrels, presented by E-Trade from Morgan Stanley. It is Wednesday, July 23rd. Derek Van Riper, Saris, Jed Lowry here with you. On this episode, we dig into a little bit of baseball news you should know, a couple injuries befalling the Tampa Bay Rays just 8 days ahead of the trade deadline. Our main focus today is going to be on high chase rate hitters, players that pop on the O-swing percentage leaderboard in a bad way, but seem to get away with that because there are some guys that are getting away with it now that may not get away with it in the long run. We'll talk about a few guys who've gone through that part of the aging curve, one of which rumored to be on the block at this deadline, Luis Robert. So tons of ground to cover today. We'll also take a look at some drama in Atlanta over the weekend with the Yankees and another sign-stealing incident that appeared to unfold on the field there. So, gentlemen, let's get started with some news here. Brandon Lowe lands on the 10-day IL, what the Rays are calling left foot and ankle tendinitis. No timetable for his return right now. The adjustment most likely is Taylor Walls plays short, Ha-Seong Kim slides over and plays second base. As long as Kim himself is healthy, he's banged up, so we could see a little bit of Jose Caballero in the next few days as well. But I think we've talked about the Rays time and time again, a difficult team to read going into any trade deadline because they always seem willing to trade guys off of the big league roster. And Brandon Lowe is the guy on this show that we're always trying to trade to somebody else.
Yeah. With a $10 million contract, he makes too much for the Rays. Yeah, I think this might actually be the weird injury that keeps him on the team. And the weird part for me is they just play Jonathan Aranda at second base. Come on. Can't be that bad. Maybe he is.
It could. It could be. Great hitter. I don't think you want Jonathan Aranda at second base.
But
yeah, I mean, if you're expecting him to, just catch the ball and throw it where it needs to be thrown, I'm guessing, he at least has an understanding of that from a different position.
Yeah, and he's played second before. It's just it hasn't been, they've moved him off that. And in terms of, playoff odds, the Rays are right there with 35% odds. I think that we've sort of broken it down that, one of the Yankees, Red Sox, Blue Jays, and Rays may not make it. And so that's why we maybe had them both selling and buying, doing their thing, trying to improve for next year while staying in it for this year. I think they'll just have to do it with something else. The other guy I think that is the new Brandon Lowe for me is going to be Zach Littell. I could see them trading Zach Littell and maybe Shane McClanahan gets healthy, or they just bring Joe Boyle up, and just move things around like they usually do.
I was very ready for the Joe Boyle mention. I was going to say I don't think the Shane McClanahan setback, which I think it's good news. Maybe it's good news that it's not related to the nerve problem in his triceps. It's a biceps problem. Like, well, it's still the arm, and it's still a guy that's had
around
multiple TJs. Like, I just please, let's get Shane McClanahan back healthy. Wow. He's one of my favorite pitchers to watch when he's out there. But I don't think that changes their plans and willingness to move a starter. I think they have that much depth built up. Taj Bradley rumored to be someone they would consider flipping as well. So I still expect this team to be active despite both of these injuries. Here's one for us, Jed. Austin Riley slowed down his return from the 10-day IL. He's been dealing with an abdominal strain. And the challenging part of injuries for teams that are falling out of playoff contention, even in late July, is that the incentive to bring someone back, especially someone that's a cornerstone player on a long-term deal, it dwindles, right? You give him as much time as he needs. And I guess at this point, it's like, you could certainly add a couple of weeks potentially if he's not feeling good, even though they're saying for now he could be back as early as Friday.
Yeah, no, and anytime you start talking about core, oblique, anything in that region, there's so much stress that's put on both sides of the ball, right? You're creating a ton of torque when you're hitting. He's got to throw the ball across the diamond from third. Those core injuries get tricky real fast, and it feels like you start, because that is the center of the mass. You're starting to compromise up and down the chain as well.
What's weird for me about this one is, so Lars Nootbaar has an intercostal, similar sort of injury. And his timetable keeps getting switched because he can't swing without pain. So he can't even start a swing progression. What's weird for me about this Riley situation is that he started the progression and is slowing. So normally when I think of abdominal, intercostal, these kind of issues, obliques, I think you have to just stop all activity until it doesn't hurt to do activity. This is sort of how Greinke explained it to me. You just don't throw for a while, and then you try to throw, and if it hurts, then you have to stop again, and then, and so on. So I just, what do you think is happening if he has felt good enough to come back and now they're slowing? Like what could be happening there?
Yeah, they're gonna build him up. So they're gonna start with X amount of swings, right? Even if it's just off the tee at 50%, they're just trying to build up that workload, because that's where the real injuries happen, is when you go from very little activity to all of a sudden full activity. So my guess is that he started that progression, was feeling okay, was recovering fine from it, but then got to a point where he kind of hit a threshold where a certain amount of swings kind of put him over the edge, and he didn't recover well from it the next day.
Okay, yeah.
Was still sore the next day, basically.
That makes a lot of sense. The Braves have been leaning on Nacho Alvarez as their primary third baseman. I think he started 7 consecutive games at third. I think we're going to see Nacho Alvarez a lot in this lineup throughout the remaining 2 months, because he's probably their longer-term option at shortstop as opposed to Nick Allen, who's playing that spot right now. And the other thing with Riley, it's a little surprising. We've had this sort of 2-year dip compared to what he was doing in 2021, 2022, even 2023. Like the power, he slugged over 500 each of those seasons. Hit at least 33 homers, age 24 to age 26. Maybe that's the absolute peak. Like we talked about peak ages shifting up a little bit. I think the decline we've seen from Riley each of these last 2 seasons in production, I think that's been related to these injuries, because last season was a wrist injury. This year, it's that core problem. I still think there's a really dangerous power bat that's going to be in the heart of this lineup and producing for a long time once he gets to the other side of these ailments.
Yeah,
agreed. Underlying
agreed.
numbers are great.
Yeah, agreed.
One other news-related item to get to here: Bobby Witt Jr. getting a rare day off on Wednesday. That's not normally like the kind of thing you put at the top of the show, but I noticed that he's only DH'd 4 times all season. So he did it Tuesday, felt some soreness in his knee. That's why he's getting a full day off Wednesday. And I think about this kind of related to the heavy workloads in Atlanta that we've talked about on that core group of players. Riley among them, Ozzie Albies among them, Acuna among them. They lean really, really heavily. Matt Olson. These guys log every day maxed out sorts of workloads. Jed, do you think this is the right way to manage the roster in general? And the Royals aren't the only team that do it, but Bobby Witt Jr., they're superstar, a very important player to them, and a team that, if they're going to get back to the playoffs this year, you could easily tell yourself every single game matters. So I can kind of understand why they would do it, but do you think there could be some long-term consequences to that max volume sort of approach they've been using with him?
Of course, you have every game is a there's a cumulative effect, especially over the course of the season, and then over a course of a career. So I would say you got to listen to the player, and if he's telling you that his knee is sore or something, obviously this is the guy that they are building around in this franchise. Salvador Perez is the captain, but Bobby is the superstar. And so I'm giving him, full autonomy almost to tell me, because like if anything, you got to pull the reins back on this guy, right? Like he clearly wants to play. There's some guys that you kind of have to find ways to motivate them, even when they have these big deals. But Bobby is not that guy. Bobby's a guy that you're going to have to pull the reins back on. So if he says something, you got to take it seriously and listen to that, because the last thing you can do is, lose. If something small turns into something big, now you lose him for, a year.
I think the related question I have for you, and you can't do it with everybody. If you're going to try to push 4 guys into everyday roles, you kind of have to rotate the DH spot to do it. But would that be the appropriate tweak to kind of keep his bat in the lineup, to take some of the wear and tear off his legs, to not have him on the dirt, maybe instead of 4 days DHing through the first 4 months of the season, you double that or even triple that. How much of an impact does it make DHing for a day as opposed to having to go out and play the field?
Yeah, no, it definitely helps. I mean, it's probably more than a half day off, right? Because you're really just going up there 4, maybe 5 times to swing the bat. And so, even if you run the base, you get on base every single time, you're spending 30 minutes on the field. And you can kind of take that mental break when the team is in the field. So it certainly helps. The bat is obviously something they want to have in the lineup every day. But we're at the point in the season, we're starting to get into the dog days. A day off, I think, probably makes sense for a guy who's played as much as he has at the level that he has.
Put me on team rotating DH. If I were constructing a roster, I think I'd want to use that a lot just to keep everybody in the lineup as often as they want to be in the lineup and can be, but also to give those breaks, to have a little bit of a load management side built in as well. Because, you get to this point in the year, you're right. The cumulative wear and tear really probably starts to grind on you over these final 2 months. Let's get into our main topic for today. We're going to take a look at some players that chase a lot. So if you go to Fangraphs, you go to Baseball Savant, you look at the O-swing percentage, you can make that a leaderboard, sort that to get some big numbers. You'll see some numbers up in the 40s, right? So it's chasing pitches outside of the strike zone. And, in a vacuum, nothing really happens in a vacuum, as Jed says all the time. And if we're in a vacuum, we'd all be dead, as my friend Todd Zola told me for a long time. It seems like chasing is just bad. And the more I look at it, the less I believe that to be true. It's not ideal. Chasing, like if your choices are chase or don't chase, you'd rather have a player that doesn't chase a lot. But chasing a lot, I think, is part of what makes some players as productive as they possibly can be. And we have a few historical examples, recent years. Javier Báez is one extreme we'll talk about today. Luis Robert, who I mentioned earlier. We have a couple of guys at the top of that leaderboard right now who are playing at extremely high levels. I mean, Pete Crow-Armstrong is an MVP candidate right now, putting up phenomenal numbers for the Cubs. And Pete Crow-Armstrong is a player that is going to carry a high chase rate, I think, for a long time. Maybe forever. It might be just who he is. 47.9%. It's one of the highest chase rates you're going to see when you look on any sort of leaderboard. So how problematic is it when you see a guy early in his career, especially? Like, how much does age actually factor into the amount of concern we should have about this approach,
Well, we know that there's the seminal finding from Bill Petty when he did these aging curves, that he found that contact outside the zone ages more terribly than almost any other statistic from a batter. And, I think that's just because, I think it's just physically tough to pull off the, hitting something from your nipples to your toes. Like if you have that big of a zone, like it can be physically tough. Now, Jose Altuve has pulled it off for a lot of his career, but the kind of the guys that represent the issue here are Pablo Sandoval, Josh Hamilton. The list actually goes on, but those are the two that come to me. Javier Báez is another one, I guess. These are players that chase a lot and see their strikeout rates, kind of go up in late careers. So that's one issue. But, when we're talking about this year's leaderboard and we're talking about good players, Pete Crow-Armstrong's up there. He's a good player. Ceddanne Rafaela is a good player. Jose Altuve is still on this list. Jeremy Pena is on this list. Bo Bichette, Andy Pages. A lot of these guys are young guys. Jacob Wilson reaches a lot. Young guy. When they are young, how much do we care? How much should we care? And that's when we've realized over the last few years that chase by itself is one thing. Chase with respect to how much you actually swing in the zone is another. So the fact that Pete Crow-Armstrong swings at 80% of the pitches he sees in the zone just means he's an aggressive player. I can see if you look at his stance and you look at his swing data. Look, he's changed his stance pretty remarkably. He's moved up in the box and he's changed the distance between his feet by a bunch. He's kind of become more vertical, a little bit more like tighter together with his legs to begin. He moved up in the box. And I asked him in March, what do you think about intercept point? Where do you think you are with that? He said, I need to get the ball further out in front. Since that day, he's gotten the ball 5 inches further out in front. So he's an aggressive guy trying to get the ball out in front to hit for power. And he can see the zone because he swings at 80% of the pitches in the zone. He just thinks he can get to pitches outside the zone. So what you can see here is he's tightened up a little bit and has become more aggressive on pitches up in the zone. He still chases, but he knows what he's looking for. This.
Yeah, that would hurt to put together. It's Freddie Peralta, 96-mile-an-hour fastball, just above the television strike zone box, which we know has some limitations. I think what I would say is if the pitch that PCA homered off of there counts against you in O-swing, and you swing at that, that's actually probably a good thing. I think that's a pitch that a major leaguer has to be able to hit, like 95, 96, right above the top of the strike zone. That's just part of the game now, right? So that wouldn't count for me as a bad chase. I guess that's kind of part of it too, is like every part of the edge of the strike zone is a little bit different. You have areas where you can do damage, areas where you should do damage that maybe are too close to take too, Jed. So like, how much does the type of chase matter to you?
Yeah, I mean, and I want to go back to like you were talking about Altuve as an example, right? Like this guy that has elite bat to ball skills. Like I just looked it up. I mean, you're talking about a guy who for his career 88% zone contact rate, 6% higher than league average, and even on the chase contact, he's at 70%. Where the league is at 57. So this is a guy that makes extreme contact, and I saw it firsthand. He has the ability to put the barrel on the ball on pitches that, him and Dustin Pedroia are kind of the two guys that had this elite bat to ball, seemingly no matter where the pitch was, they could make contact. And so, but they're also manipulating their swing to do that, right? Like they're far more athletic. They're far more, when I say athletic, like they're just like moving through space, changing their body, changing the tilt of their swing to get the barrel to the ball, as opposed to robotically taking your A swing. If that makes sense. So these guys, if you have that adaptability, mid-pitch adaptability, you still can, if you're extreme contact like that and you can put the barrel on, you still give yourself a chance to get a hit. Altuve early in his career, a very fast player as well. But DVR, back to your point, like swinging out of the zone isn't necessarily a bad thing if you're ready, particularly for the fastball. For me, right, like the fastball up. If you're being aggressive and swinging, I'm okay with that. Just like that pitch that PCA hit out. It's really the it's the one that you're not being aggressive on, and you're just trying to make contact, and you're not an elite bat to ball skill player.
But so PCA does not belong in the same conversation as Jose Altuve. I know you know this, but like, we're talking about 8% swinging strike rate for Jose Altuve this year, at this point in his career. And PeteCrow-Armstrong is double that in terms of sweet, So there is a type that you're talking about that sort of can make contact, is very adjustable. And I would, just looking at scanning across the top of the O-swing leaderboards this year, I would say Ernie Clement is like that. I would say Bo Bichette to some extent is like that. These are sub 10% whiff rates. Jacob Wilson is obviously, Luis Ariz is obviously one of these types of players that, can be really adjustable. Maybe Luis Garcia Jr. is right there. But then there's another type of player, which is the Pete Crow-Armstrong, Hunter Goodman, maybe Ceddanne Rafaela, Trevor Story at this point in his career, Julio Rodriguez, maybe Jackson Chourio. These are guys that are aggressive power hitters that miss a lot. To some extent, there is a relationship there. Getting the ball out in front you have to make the decision earlier. You are going to miss more. So there is and a lot of these guys are high bat speed. And high bat speed in general is good, but high bat speed and maybe a high tilt swing, a power approach, get the ball out in front, something like Nick Kurtz is doing. It can be really successful power-wise, and it can be the right decision for you, but it can also have some ramifications for your aging, your strikeout rate, and so on, your swing strike rate.
Yeah, and if I'm looking at PCA, for example, if the league is chasing at 28%, he's chasing at 42. And so that's, it's a high chase rate. But the thing that jumps off, and like I said earlier, that doesn't bother me as much. But if you look at the league average on the chase contact, where 57.6, he's at 55.9, so basically 56. So he's making contact out of the zone at a similar rate and swinging at 75% more balls than the league out of the zone. That's going to lead to a lot of weak contact eventually. It might not happen now, but it's going to happen eventually.
And strikeouts, really. I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of unfortunate because he's a Cub and he's such a great defensive player and he's so exciting. And I think the comp here is Javier Báez. It just leaps up at me. It's like, oh man, like really great defensive player, really exciting, really fun to watch, and yet has this like similar flaw that may end up being his undoing later in his career.
Well, and I think that what I would just want to see from somebody like PCA is I don't want to tone down the aggressiveness. Like, the chase rate could probably go down a little bit as he ages, hopefully, right? Hopefully. But what I really would want to see is that chase contact to go down, right? So if you're going to swing out of the zone, miss.
Oh, you want him to miss?
I want him to miss. I want him to miss. I was actually curious as I was doing this research. I went back and looked at my career actually, and some of the chase contact. And early 2015 is the earliest on Savant. I was at I never chased as much. I'm a 22% chase guy for my career, but my chase contact started in the 70s. So that was something that I had to learn, and I got down to 56%. But I'd still love to see PCA lower the chase contact. So I don't mind if you're going to chase, but if you're going to go after it and it's a bad pitch, don't make that little adjustment just to hit the ball. Like, take your ace swing.
That's going to be a bad. Yeah, it's going to be a bad hit.
It's going to be a
Marco
bad
Scudero
outcome.
Once told me, I told him he leads the league in contact rate. And he said, I lead the league in bad contact as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I would, I would, obviously as he gets older, he learns more about himself, about the pitches that he can and can't handle, well at the big league level, if the chase stays at 42, okay, like that's, it's still too high for me. I would love to see that drop, but the one that really jumps off the page to me is one that I would love to see come down. Because if we just want to talk about Aaron Judge, right? Like Aaron Judge is only chasing 22% of the time, but his chase contact is only 41%. So when he swings and misses when he swings out of the zone,
he gets
misses.
another chance. Yeah,
exactly.
Gets another chance. Yeah,
exactly.
I was just noticing too, looking at the Fangraphs pages, there are different sources for O swing percentage. StatCast has one. The default on my leaderboard comes from, I think, Sports Info Solutions. Those numbers are a little higher. So just if you hear us throwing out different numbers, that might explain why you're getting slight variations in what's
Sports
going
Info
on.
Solutions has 48% for PCA.
Yeah.
And I think they're using visual scouts. They're using people that watch the games, I think. So I think that's the source of the difference there. The one reason I like to use Sports Info Solutions is they have a swinging strike number, and for some reason that's compelling to me. I understand that like a 10% swinging strike rate is around league average, and I can sort of use that as a barometer in my analysis. But we're looking at these guys, so with the historical comps, Luis Robert Jr. and Javier Báez. What can we learn from those guys and what they did when they were going well and what when they're not going well? And so with Luis Robert, I think to some extent there's a quote unquote he got figured out. Now that's really base analysis, but like this is on the left is Luis Robert's power stroke from 2023. That's when he was good. So you're like, oh, he's a low and away guy. And what they've generally done is, sliders away. Because he likes Lowe away, he can be susceptible to sliders away. But what they've really done is they've upped the sinker usage, and the sinkers are coming inside, and you can see this. And, even if the sinker is landing, one of those sinker red hot spots on the right is similar to where his red hot spot is, that's a sinker that's coming in at a different direction than what he's looking for. It's coming in on him. So there's a different movement pattern from these sinkers. And what you've seen over the course of his career is that sinker usage against Luis Robert Jr. has just gone up every year. So this is a thing that he is dealing with, and he's not dealing with it well. Javier Báez, on the other hand, we can look at his swing rates, and 2021, when he was going well, he swung at pitches up in the zone. In 2022 to 2024, he swung at everything, really, but he did swing at pitches up in the zone. 22 to 24, he stopped swinging at pitches up in the zone and only swung at those pitches low in the zone and in a way where you're like, dude, don't swing at those. And then this year in the mini resurgence, he's focused on swinging up in the zone, and he's actually swinging low in the zone less than ever. So, he has been able to refine his swing heat map. But here's the thing that I dreamt up last night that I want to throw to you guys. I had this idea in a dream. But I was looking at these heat maps before I went to bed. I was looking at them all day yesterday, and I was thinking about this. And to me, the corollary here, swing decisions, swing heat maps, these things, that is the same to a hitter as command is to a pitcher. And the reason I say this is when we study pitching, we say stuff is really easy, bat speed is really easy. We can measure this. We know it. And these have good, relationships to outcomes. More bat speed means more power. More stuff means more strikeouts. That sort of thing, right? But we know that there's this little thing that you got to do in games. Like if you're a pitcher, you got to have command. You got to be able to put it in places. And the pitchers that have good command are able to kind of move their heat maps around. They're able to be like, oh, they're hitting me here. I'm going to do this instead. They're able to adjust better. And the guys who have bad chase rates, I think, are not able to adjust as well. So that's where the corollary to command comes in. And so you're looking at these heat maps for Javier Báez and you're saying, dude, why didn't you just swing more at high pitches 2022 to 24? That was 3 years, dude. You were 3 years in the wilderness. And you're like, Luis Robert Jr., like, why don't you just stop swinging at sinkers in? Like, man, like they're not doing anything good with them, And, you can yell at the screen as a fan, but it just represents sort of another way that I think it's like command is, for a pitcher is degrees of you're trying to release the ball in these little degrees, right? And so it's a really small difference between having good command and not having bad command. And I actually think that chase is the same way, where you're, as a hitter, trying to deduct where that ball is going from a very small difference in outcomes, out of the hand, right? And what is having a bad chase rate is not being able to really zero in on where that ball is going, So I think it has to do with these really small differences. It's really I think it's actually kind of hard to nail down good plate discipline. We thought it was easy. We're like, just don't chase. But now we're like, oh no, it's way more difficult than that. And so
thank you.
There's a little
welcome
command.
Welcome to my side. It's not that simple.
I still had to relate it to pitching though.
But this is this is the human element of this, right? Like this is the part, like we can talk about all these guys who have all this ability, that can have the highest bat speed in the world, that are if you were to take them to like the NFL combine or even MLB combine at this point, they test off the charts, right? Mm-hmm. But then you get in an uncontrolled environment and in front of 50,000 people, and all of a sudden you don't max out what your potential is, because you don't have that adaptability. And I would say that, you nailed it. Whatever you're working on, your dreams are working right now, because that's exactly right. I mean, that's, guys that have stood in that box, they understand that. They know that it's not as simple as just saying, don't swing at the sinker, because at the end of the day, the pitcher is the one controlling the ball, and they're like the good ones. They are messing with your sight lines. They're executing on these pitches. The guys that pitch versus throw. And when I hear you talk about this, I hear someone, who's we know you're talking about stuff, right? Leading to more strikeouts. Of course, that's somebody who's throwing it. That's not somebody who's going up there and has a game plan and is making not just mid game or mid start adjustments. They're making mid at bat adjustments, right? Adjusting, they're looking that's that like combination of the catcher and the pitcher looking at how a guy is taking a pitch and seeing how he reacts to one pitch, and then that might affect the next pitch that I call based on the hitter's reaction. So it is truly this game within the game where it's one chess move followed by the next, and if I'm at the plate and I chase a curveball down in the zone and I didn't recognize it, this is early in my career. I knew that they were, that the catcher took note of that. The pitcher's going to take note of that. So it's either, and this is where like the good ones, right? Honestly, the good ones, they would probably say, oh, this guy swung at the curveball, in the dirt. He's probably looking for it again. I can throw a fastball here and lower in the zone and get away with it, because if he sees fastball plane low, it might be the curve, but he's going to take it on that plane, right? And then you can get away with the fastball down in the zone. So it's these
or like a fastball up, because he's going to be looking for something soft.
Yeah, but the fastball up, also like if the fastball up on that plane, to me, if it matches the plane of the curveball, depending on the curveball, right? Like I'm thinking in my mind, I'm picturing a big 12-6 that even the fastball at the top of the zone is on the same plane.
Look like it, yeah.
It could, it might actually be a fastball up out of the zone. So, so I get my point is like I'm visualizing one specific experience, and it's not mix dependent.
But this is also something that an analyst like would have a really hard time putting his finger on. You can understand why, they would say, I'm going to get stuff because I can put a number on it pretty easily. And,
of course.
And it also makes
it's far more predictable.
It makes our job here today, like to some extent, what we're doing is let's look at these guys and think about their future. So Pete Crow-Armstrong and Ceddanne Rafaela and Jackson Chourio are three guys who are at the top of these chase lists. How much do we think will impact their futures? We saw some change from PCA. Here's a thing from Ceddanne Rafaela. He basically skinnied up, right? He was swinging at everything, and he was like, okay, I'm going to swing at everything that's really over the heart of the plate. I'm still going to swing at everything up and down, but I'm going to really just look middle and just try to not swing at anything in and out. That's a real adjustment, and it's more of an adjustment and quicker. It's made quicker than I would have expected given his chase rate. So given these two adjustments from PCA and Ceddanne Rafaela, and I'm sure I didn't check Chourio, but I'm sure he has something similar. I wonder if we should just leave chase rate aside and analyze them through other means. Say, what do we think of them from a standpoint of strikeouts and walks and power and things like that, and defensive ability? Like I think maybe chase rate will lead us astray. Now, maybe once they turn 29, 30, like maybe it's something to bring up again. But, I don't know if I necessarily want to sign any of these guys to the longer term deal. Chourio, for just to maybe say, he's not quite as high up on the list in chase rate. He's just slightly worse than average. It's not a lot.
Well, and even comparing him to Rafaela and looking at where those guys hit homers, Chourio hits homers all over the place. Dead center, opposite field. You do it off of top end velocity. Like there's something in his approach too. I would probably look at him and say the
yeah.
types of pitches
Rafaela.
he's chasing, he might be chasing some stuff away because he can actually cover away and drive the ball right now. Again, a skill that might not age really well, but he's 21. Let's worry about that in 2032, right? We don't have to worry about
Rafaela's
that in
homers are all
2025.
right down the line.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
he's only hitting a certain type of homer.
So I do think like the intent is going to be a big part of this too, and figuring out like, okay, look, what are you trying to do, and how much of that is working, and is it working well enough when it works to make it worth the payoff of when it doesn't? You know, like is it a net positive using this approach with the skills that you bring to the table? But Rafaela, because of the high O swing percentage, a lot of these players tend to be okay-ish, average, low OBP guys that are kind of feast or famine with power. We tend to avoid them in fantasy, like you and I do, because we're like, they're just too risky. They could fall to the bottom third of the order. They could lose playing time. Even with Rafaela being a phenomenal defender, I think we were more worried about him losing his share of an everyday role than we were thinking about the possibility of a step forward offensively. So I look at this and I think, okay, who else is like this we haven't talked about yet? Ezequiel Tovar is also a very aggressive player. Phenomenal defender at short, and plays in a ballpark where balls in play get boosted and rewarded. Like, I think I'm still more into taking a chance on a player like Tovar because of some adjustments we're seeing from similar players that have a very aggressive, chase-heavy approach.
Just, it just, like, when I'm watching them play, like, it just, it doesn't hit me right. It's not the type of, like, I remember I saw Ezequiel Tovar in the Arizona Fall League, and I was like, I'm out. He was a young player, but I was like, this guy is swinging at everything. Like, I can't with this guy. You know what I mean? It's like my inner fan, I guess. I'm just like, no, like, this can't work. But it does work for some guys. Yeah. And these are guys that I traditionally have missed. I don't have any shares of Tovar, PeteCrow-Armstrong, or Ceddanne Rafaela this year.
You know who else is like this too, going back even further? Carlos Gomez. And I remember when Carlos Gomez was breaking through and got traded a couple of times, first with the Mets, got flipped to the Twins, ended up with the Brewers for a while. When he first landed in Milwaukee, I was like, this guy just chases too much. It's never going to work. Yeah, he's a great defender, but he's your fourth outfielder and nothing more than that. And I was wrong. He turned out to be better than that. And I think some of it just takes time. I mean, it took, for Gomez, 4 or 5 seasons in the big leagues before it all started to come together. And eventually get the chase rate down to like the mid 30s later in his career. But that was always kind of just part of what you got with him. And it was still good enough to carry him to an everyday role. And fantasy-wise, he was a first-round pick for a couple of years, a late first-rounder because of that power-speed combo. So players like this can be really good.
Yeah, well, and I think you just can't, if you're going to chase a lot, you can't miss your pitch in the zone, right? When you get your pitch in the zone, that's what it boils down to. And like, if we're going to go back to Chourio, and we did a show about, about some young players, I don't know, it was a couple weeks ago, and it all comes down to the fastball, right? This year, if we just want to go on production, his WOBA against fastballs is down 60 points this year. His run value is down 6. He went from a +2 on a 4-seamer, and he's at a -4 right now on the fastball. And so, I think and his chase rate, to Eno's point, I think earlier, is only 34%. But once again, that chase contact is up at 53%. So I'd almost like to see, like, if you're getting beat by the fastball on this. I was looking at some of the batted ball profiles too, like pop up. He's up to 9%. I'd almost like to see him more aggressive in the sense of just trying to get to balls, I guess square balls up more, as opposed, once again, I think he like we talked about with Michael Harris, I think he wanted to take, quote unquote, the next step. And it was like, all right, I'm going to start lifting balls, as opposed to, just being like 2020 guy as a 20-year-old. If you take that same approach, turns into 30-30 as you age. It just, it's not something that you change. And I can just see, he's under the quality of contact. If we're just looking on Savant from 24 to 25, he was 19.3% under balls in 2024 and 27% in 2025.
Yeah. Another way of looking at it, he makes contact behind the league average. Like he lets it travel maybe a little bit much. He has an opposite. He kind of has an opposite field approach. I think I would tell him to go get that ball, especially with the 20% strikeout rate. He could strike out 22, 23, 24% of the time and get to 30 home runs, and that would be more valuable.
Yep, agreed.
Trying to tie some of these concepts all together, I was looking at the leaderboards for like where hitters do best, where they have the most positive run value, Hart versus Shadow versus Chase. I think Jed and I brought this up with Michael Harris a few weeks ago, and I'm not surprised that all the guys we're talking about, or most of the guys we're talking about today, are doing well in the heart of the zone. Pete Crow-Armstrong's a +7 in the heart of the zone. Chourio, who we were just talking about, is a +10. Like, just for context, the very top of the leaderboard, Aaron Judge +35, Schwarber +22, Buxton +20, Ohtani, Suarez are up there like 50. So like a 7's good. Like a 7, it ties Pete Crow-Armstrong for 25th, right? So I thought that these guys that chase would actually have better numbers in the shadow zone overall than some of their counterparts. And there's no, at least so far, I have not found any sort of relationship that backs that up. So I was a little disappointed there. But I think if you found a guy that was aggressive like this and they were not doing well in the heart of the zone, the pitches they should be crushing, that would be a huge red flag.
That's Harris's problem to some extent. He's not swinging it enough at pitches down the middle, and he's not doing much with them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. And it's fastball, right? He's getting beat by the fastball. The production on the fastball has fallen off the cliff. And to me, that a lot of that just has to be, it has to do with intent, because, if you're getting beat by the fastball, you're not on time. And then you're just making all these compromises through the kinetic chain on the swing to try to get to pitches. Cause nobody in their heart like really wants to swing and miss over and over and over again. The whole point of the game is to hit the ball.
Right. Also, and like you could say, like, well, can't you sit slide or whatever? But the fastball is still the pitch that's thrown the most, especially if you group them all together. It's still the pitch that's thrown the most. So you can't get beat by it. Like you have to time to it. I was talking to Austin Riley and was like, could you theoretically be in between the fastball and slider? And he's like, no, that'd be terrible. Then you wouldn't be on time for either, and you really do need to be on time for the fastball. I have seen, we were just talking about this with Jorge Polanco. Like, I think Jorge Polanco is taking a bit of a slider approach and basically just trying to beat the fastball the other way, just kind of a little bit defensive with the fastball. What do you think of the longevity of that kind of approach, where you're really just trying to go the other way and just trying to slap the fastball and do damage on the slider?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can work for certain players. I think that's probably a little bit more of an advanced approach. I wouldn't expect a young 20-year-old to take that approach, nor would I want him to.
Because you want him to do damage on the fastball.
Yeah, exactly. So. I think the fastball, that approach where you're, if you are sitting slider and you still have the bat speed to react to a fastball, that can be a special combination. It's just hard to do.
Yeah.
The thing we sort of finished the episode 2 weeks ago on, talking about a lot of the young hitters and what we expected to see happen. And Harris was part of that. Jordan Walker was part of that episode. Royce Lewis, O'Neill Cruz. We started to think about how fastballs are changing again, like the usage of them, the specific locations, and seeing more two-seamers or more cutters, or like the various changes, and how someone that was good at hitting mostly four-seamers might get worse on fastballs as a group if they're seeing more variations from a greater number of pitchers. Like if you have more guys in the league mixing 2 or 3 fastballs, the guy that used to crush four-seamers might not crush the four-seamer anymore because he's getting other fastballs mixed in more often.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a bit of the Robert situation, where like I think he sees fastball, he sees speed, and he thinks this is going to be middle, and instead it's coming in on his hands, and that's obviously not what he wants to do. So I think that's like an old school thing that has definitely come back pretty hard. Is we used to be like, just throw your best pitches by Stuff Plus, and now we're like, no, maybe you should have 3 fastballs because it's going to be bad. Michael Harris did just pop out with the bases loaded against Verlander, but it was on a slider low, not a pitch down the middle.
Okay. It
was on a pitch outside the zone, though. It was a slider outside the zone by 3-4 inches. So I mean, he must have he in that position. He's trying to drive runs in. There's the bases loaded with 2 outs. He's gonna, if the pitch is only 2 or 3 inches off the bottom, he's gonna probably swing at it.
So I want one follow-up on this before we move on to our next topic. So Luis Robert, of all the players we're talking about, most likely to be traded at the deadline.
Yeah.
If not at the deadline, then probably this winter. Still has a couple of club options left, so it's relatively affordable. He's heating up now. The season results haven't been great. It's a 206, 292, 344 line, 10 homers, 25 steals, almost a 30% K rate. In what circumstances would you feel good about trading for Luis Robert? Because I think if nothing else, these players have shown that they're high variance players too. And as you age, the ceiling is dropping and the floor is probably dropping with it. Is there still enough ceiling with Robert, given that he's not that old, he's just 27, where you'd be excited to add him as an offensive upgrade for the final 2 months of the season and possibly for a playoff run?
Yeah, I wonder about, the motivation, right? There's if he gets into a new environment, the White Sox are playing better this year, but they're far from a playoff team. They were, not good last year. And I do wonder if you could catch lightning in a bottle on this guy, because we've talked about this. The bat speed is still there, and I wonder how much of it has to do. I mean, the sprint speed is still there, the range is still there. I wonder how much of it is environmental, of just not being motivated. It's hard showing up to the ballpark and getting your butt kicked day in and day out
with like
and
2,000
staying
people
motivated
in the stands.
Yeah, it's hard to stay motivated. So you look at a guy that's still 27 years old. There's some big red flags there, but you just wonder how much of it is the actual environment that he's showing up to every day right now.
I also wonder what the information environment in Chicago is like. I know that they're trying to improve it, and on the pitching side, there's definitely evidence that they've done so. But I know that the hitting side was 5-10 years behind. I'm not even exaggerating. So, if they have a traject, are they using it? If they have a traject and are using it, are they saying, hey, Luis, can you just stand in against sinkers for an hour? Like, you don't even have to swing at them. Just see them for a while. Sinkers in, from righties or whatever. Does Robert know that, anything from these heat maps that I've mentioned, and so, what we saw with PCA and Ceddanne, that's what I'd want to do with Robert. I'd want to say, instead of thinking, don't swing at this stuff, like, can we zero in on something like Ceddanne did, where he kind of just was like, I'm going to zero in the middle, and maybe I'll be up and down, but I'll be in the middle. And what you saw from Javier Báez, late career, even the ability to be like, I'm just going to focus on the high pitch. I'd want to do something like that with Robert. Be like, let's just focus on this pitch.
Simplify.
And if you miss on some other stuff, don't worry about it. We're not trying to make you not swing at pitches outside the zone. You're not going to do that. I actually, that's the other thing that I think is interesting is I don't think that people change their chase rate that much.
Yeah,
I think something innate about how they see the ball.
Yeah, no, you're probably right with that. And if you just look at Luis, I mean, he's swinging, in the zone and out of the zone higher than league average. And he's also making contact both in the zone and out of the zone at lower than average. So he's actually swinging a lot. He's just missing a lot.
Yeah.
So it's changed a little bit, though, since he has dropped the last couple of years. I was looking at the StatCast O swing, it's down to 32.1%. Back in 2022, he was at 41.4%. He's knocked off about 3 percentage points each year. So he's chasing a little bit less.
It hasn't been good for his results or his.
It
almost seems like a don't chase idea or something. Whereas I think I'd want to be like, you are aggressive. We don't care about your chase rate. That's almost what I'd tell him. I'd be like, we don't care about your chase rate. We just want you to swing at things that you do damage. You used to have a 278 ISO, Now you have a 138 ISO. Like, let's change that number. we don't care if you go back from a 36% swing to a 43. Like that doesn't bother us. We want to do damage. And the teams that like I was just watching the Padres, they rallied back. They were down 4-1 in the ninth. They rallied to 4-3 on a Jackson Merrill thing. And then the next two batters were Jose Iglesias and Trenton Brooks. And that was the end of the game. And I'm like, if you have Luis Robert over Trenton Brooks, I think and you're the Padres, like that's something you want to do.
Yeah, and I would equate the drop and chase to like almost like a pullback and aggression. And with Luis Robert, you want him to stay aggressive. You just don't, you gotta make contact, right? And I think to me it's stay aggressive, narrow your sights, right? Like be more focused, and that's why I brought it up. Be more focused on what you're actually trying to accomplish or what you're looking for, whatever that is. And I just wonder how much of what that is environmental and motivation that when you're showing up to the ballpark every day and getting your butt kicked for a year and a half now, that starts to wear on you.
Yeah. What if this uptick in performance is the trade deadline approaching and being like, oh, please
get me. Yes, please. Exactly.
And injuries on top of that last year too, but you guys are right. It's come that chasing less has come with just swinging less overall. And that's not necessarily the toggle that you want with that skill set. So we'll see. We'll see if the move happens and what tweaks might follow if Luis Robert ends up somewhere else. San Diego would be a good fit among a few others, I think, if a team were going to go out there and try to get something better than what they're trotting out there on a regular basis. All right, so we got one bit of video to play here if you're watching on YouTube. There's a situation in Atlanta over the weekend, just to bring you up to speed. Bases loaded, 6th inning, 7-4 lead for Atlanta. Anthony Volpe's the plate. Jazz Chisholm's on second base. We'll tell you why that matters in just a second. And we got Rafael Montero throwing a high fastball. Volpe holds back. We got a slider in the dirt. Volpe doesn't offer at it. Why is that? Oh, it's because Jazz Chisholm on second base is waving his arms, showing something that maybe he sees in the glove, that it's not going to be a fastball. And the next pitch after that's a fly ball to the warning track, missed the home run by just a couple of feet. So it's interesting because this incident resulted in Eddie Perez, one of the coaches for Atlanta, getting into a verbal altercation with Jazz. You can see him on the highlight waving it off, saying, "Hey, don't talk. We don't need to do that." I don't know if anything is going to come from the investigation. It doesn't really seem like there's a lot here. But the question I had for you, Jed, is what was likely being picked up on for Jazz? Because it seemed like the signal was just don't swing, knowing that it wasn't a fastball. So is it something in the glove, something else mechanically that they were picking up on and relaying? And is it not just your job as a pitcher and catcher to, conceal what you're doing? You've got pitch comm. Yeah. So it's not picking up signs. It's pitch tipping in some form that Jazz was likely picking up on.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll probably likely never know, what exactly is. So I'll make some assumptions that Jazz could see into the glove and see the grip, and was relaying that. And I just, that's part of this gamesmanship, that maybe has been lost a little bit. You've got pitch Kong, to your point, DVR. It's just inexcusable to have somebody on second base and a pitcher have a glove position where a runner could see anything. It just, and you know what? If you are going to do that, play the game a little bit, right? Show the guy a fastball grip. If you think that he's doing something, relaying signs, show a fastball grip, get him to relay the sign, and then change to a slider and then throw your pitch. I just, in the era of pitch comm, relaying signs from second base, particularly on grip, not as much sign, but on grip has been happening probably since the beginning of time in baseball. And so
well, I do have one question for you though.
Yeah.
So he goes like this.
I mean, that was a little.
That was not subtle.
It was a little egregious. Which is like.
Is it possible they didn't have a a method of sign relaying in place, and so he was just basically being like, "Don't swing."
It's certainly possible. It's certainly possible.
Because that's a bigger sign than you've ever seen. Like that was one of the
by
biggest.
far. Like
Okay.
you know that
He's doing jumping jacks out there.
I mean, it's three amigos. You guys,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
standing on the roof.
So I think that they must not have had it worked out, but Jazz was like, "Oh, I can see this," and he's like, "I need to tell him." So he's just like, "Hey," you know? But and so maybe the opposing coach was like, "Hey, like, don't show up our pitcher. Like, yeah, you can, you know, do your sign thing, but like, don't show up our pitcher." And Jazz is like, "Well, dude, what am I supposed to do, man? Like, you didn't have any signs figured out. I had to tell him, you know, like, you go away." So I could kind of see both sides being like, you know, don't show up our pitcher. But yeah, Jesus Luzardo was dealing with this, you know, where people were able to see into his glove, so he had to change the way he held his glove. I mean, this is happening everywhere. I don't blame Jazz. I think once I saw what we were looking through the video, and like I was like, how could anybody be mad at Jazz? And then when I saw him like make the sign, I was like, oh, okay. I kind of get why somebody might be mad if you're just sitting there like, don't swing. Like, he was almost yelling it.
Yeah, Greg Joyce from the New York Post had the longer shot, like the center field, some kind of camera from the outfield. It might have been like a fan shot, even a video that he had put up, and that was what we cut into the video on YouTube. And prior to that, when you're just watching the game feed, all you see is Jazz's helmet just kind of bopping up and down at the bottom of the screen because he's taking his lead off of second.
You can see that he can maybe
hand.
see in. Like you can see that his head is in a position to maybe see into the glove. That's what you can see from that. But the other thing that I think it did no doubt help the team, because if you look at the Volpe non-swing at the fastball, this is an aggressive hold. Like he wants to swing at this because he thinks it's a fastball, and he only holds up last minute because it's like 5 inches above the zone. Right. And then on the slider below the zone, when Jazz is doing his thing, he doesn't. That's not really
not even remotely interested in that pitch at all. Like was not even fooled by like nothing. And just like, well, because he get a little. He knew not to swing at it.
And then you get a big swing on the sacrifice fly on a fastball up again. So I think there was probably some signs being relayed, and I think it probably helped the Yankees a little bit. And so I think that's heady play from Jazz. It's just, you know, maybe next time come up with some sort of sign system before the game.
I mean, you also, my thing when we were talking about this, you know, is like, you don't want them to know you've got something. You kind of want to keep that to yourself too. So once they know he's tipping, they can stop it. They can do something. They can change pitchers. They can do something. You know, like mix it up,
maybe
whatever.
A bigger concern with the divisional foe, you know, if the Braves, like, who cares? They'll figure it out. And so, you know, I guarantee that Rafael Montero is, you know, having some, you know, pitch sessions, you know.
Glove position. Exactly. Glove position.
Yeah, they have definitely talked about it since then. So if you're wondering what was going on there, that's what was going on. Thanks to Greg Joyce for having that video, because that certainly made it easier to see what was really going on that play. Maybe he was just yelling. I didn't have the audio gone. I didn't. The game. No, I did. The game mic. The game mics didn't pick that up. The field mics weren't getting that. So if it was, if he was saying it, it wasn't loud enough to be picked up by those mics on the field. We need to go on our way out the door. Just a reminder, you can follow Eno on Blue Sky, enoceris.bsky.social. I'm dvr.bsky.social. You can find Jed over on Instagram. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.